28 past the hour as Catholics around the globe mourn Pope Francis. Key parts of his leadership are being examined. Pope Francis sought to make the church more open to the LGBTQ plus community. He told reporters in 2013, quote, "If a person is gay and seeks God and has goodwill, who am I to judge him?" Pope Francis's leadership also came in the midst of an institutional crisis over clergy sex abuse, leading him to create the first Pontifical Council for the Investigation of Sex Abuse in the Church. Joining us now is Juan Carlos Cruz, a survivor of clerical sexual abuse who became friends with the Pope. In 2021, he was appointed by Pope Francis to serve as a member of the Vatican's Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors. Juan Carlos, thank you so much for being with us today. I know that you first met the Pope in 2018. What was the purpose of that meeting, and why did you hold that meeting?
Yes, so I'm originally from Chile, also from the U.S. But the Chilean scandal of sexual abuse had been awful. When the Pope visits Chile in January of 2018, I flew there, but the bishops did not let us meet with him. And on top of it, Pope Francis said, you know, I think it's calumny what's happening. He went back to Rome, realized that nobody in Chile went to see him, and he sent a commission to investigate. They interviewed me and interviewed a bunch of other people, and eventually invited me and two other people to stay with him in Santa Marta, his home, to tell him all about this. After that, he called all the bishops from Chile and told them that they had to submit their resignation, which was unheard of. And then he and I started this amazing friendship, and he appointed me as his advisor and to work in the Pontifical Commission. And it's been an amazing father to me, to be honest.
And how did that relationship proceed, and what were some of the things that you felt he taught you the most, and what are the things that you feel you were able to teach him?
Well, you know, I get emotional thinking about it because I never thought I'd be friends with a pope, let alone after what had happened to me, the abuse and all that. But I have to tell you that, to me, I feel like that story of Lazarus, when, you know, Jesus resurrects his friend out of the tomb. That's what Pope Francis did for me. And so, you know, I admire him for what he's done for the horror of sexual abuse in the church, or abuse of power or conscience, and for those who cover up. But I know there's a lot to do. But Pope Francis was the one that paved the way, so the scourge of abuse is eradicated from the church. So we spent afternoons, I visited every month, our birthdays, I was there. I spent Christmas with him this last Christmas. And to me, not only he taught me about what an amazing human being he was to everybody, but what he said in Portugal to everybody: the church belongs to todos, 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 to everybody. And he really believed that. And in a time where Trump is kicking out inhumanely those people that are immigrants, the poor, where people don't have access to healthcare. Those are the things that Pope Francis taught me, and I think taught the world, and is his legacy. He was in love with human beings.
Yeah, you know, one of the many things that I was struck by was that moment, Juan Carlos, and I know that you're aware of it and you remember that, when a little boy who had just lost his father asked to speak with the Pope, and that little boy told the Pope in his ear first, because he was just crying and in tears, that his father had just died. His father was an atheist, yet he had baptized all of his children. And this little boy asked the Pope, and the little boy told the Pope, and my father was so good, is he in heaven? And the Pope said, how could God not but be with those who are good? It's so difficult for someone who is an atheist to baptize his children. It's easy for a Catholic to do so. And I'm just wondering, Juan Carlos, that concept, right? Does it translate and transfer into, for example, how the Pope felt about the LGBTQ Catholic community?
Yes, well, obviously, I'm gay, and one of the biggest issues when I first met him was that the cardinal in Chile had treated me awful. I was abused when I was 14, 15, and the cardinal said in the news, well, I don't think Juan Carlos Cruz could be a victim because he's gay. He liked it. And so can you imagine?
Qué horror.
Sí, sí. It was terrible. And Pope Francis was so aware of that. And that's when he told me, and it became breaking news. And I felt bad because I thought I had revealed something, you know, that he wanted to keep between us. But he told me, God made you like this. God loves you. And you are part of all this. And the Pope loves you. So you're fine. Don't worry about that. And ever since, you know, when Uganda was passing these horrific laws on criminalization of homosexuality and death penalty, and Ghana wants to follow. I asked him, Holy Father, would you speak against criminalization? Stopping criminalization of homosexuality? And he said, absolutely. And he told me, let's write some talking points. And there's a picture there, maybe, that I'm writing the talking points with him in that little living room where we met outside his bedroom. And he had an AP interview coming up, and with Nicole Winfield, and the topic came up, and he went on and on against the criminalization of homosexuality. And I was very touched because after I took some people from GLAAD, from trans people who have been so touched, and I told everybody, look, you have only 20 minutes we have with the Pope. And he was so touched, and we stayed for an hour and a half. And he had tears in his eyes hearing these things. And I brought activists from Uganda. And like that, I mean, this was an example with the LGBT community, but like that, there's tons.
Yeah. Juan Carlos, tough because of this extraordinary love that one can feel and sense towards, you know, the Pope. And what are you most going to miss? His calls every 2 weeks, his amazing sense of humor, you know, like his dad jokes. I would say, Holy Father, how are you? Here I am sitting down, you know, like he always made really funny jokes. And the fact that I'm Chilean and he's Argentinian, we kind of had some like typical things, and you know, things that we laugh about in our countries, and we would laugh about that, and we would speak about serious things, and he told me about his life. It was incredible. I'm going to miss him. Juan Carlos Cruz, I thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jose.